Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Telcos Rift. I'm Pablo, your host, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Sebastian Barros, Managing Director at Circles, and we're going to be talking about an amazing topic because we're going to discuss whether 5G has been killing 6G or has been killing the opportunities for 6G to be an innovative technology. But before deep diving into that, Sebastian, welcome to the Telcos Rift.
Hey, Pablo, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm really happy to be here. And I think it's a super hot topic, especially as we're getting closer to Mobile World Congress. So I think it's a very important discussion to have.
So before again we start talking about 5G, 6G, and I'm one on the on the skeptical side of 6G. Probably people that have been following me know that, and hopefully you're going to be a little bit more optimistic. But can you just provide a very short intro about yourself? A little bit of what you've been doing so far and
Sure,
why
sure,
you're the right person for this topic.
sure. For the ones who don't know me, I've been almost 23 years in the telco industry. Um, I've been working with several companies. I was with Liberty, so I was on the telco side for a while. Then I moved to Ericsson, and then I worked with Ericsson in Latin America, Europe, and Asia. Then I moved to Google Cloud. So they want at that time they were starting their telco vertical. So I worked with them, especially in Asia. And then I moved back to Latin America. My home country is Chile, so I was closer. My base now is Mexico. I was with Ericsson for 5 years. I went back to Ericsson to help them launch 5G in the region. And now I'm in a new job since last year with Circles. Circles is a enabler of digital telco infrastructure. So we
Mhm.
provide all the infrastructure you need as a telco, but as a service, and still based in Mexico. So that's a little bit about me. And well, I write a lot. I have launched now my third book on AI. I also have a lot of research papers. I spend a lot of time writing. For the ones who know me, also in LinkedIn, I usually publish one post a day, and also have my Substack. So a lot of writing and researching. So I think, yeah, and this is something that really get me very very excited to talk about the future of our industry, which I think we it's in our hands to make it better.
Fantastic. And for those that haven't had the chance to connect with you on LinkedIn, definitely recommend. You're posting lots of interesting articles, and articles are always creating quite a bit of conversation back and forth. Lots of comments. So very good to see that the industry is alive and well in a sense. Every now and then it's good to hear that. But if we go back to the sort of 5G vs 6G. And I call it 5G versus 6G. Probably I shouldn't, but anyways. So my starting point is this: 5G can potentially be seen as a bit of a hit and miss type of scenario for many telcos. And what I want to try to understand from you is that, first of all, do you think that is the case? And if that's the case, how is that going to affect, or how is that affecting the development of 6G? Are the processes that we have in place correct? Is going through the same process exactly as we did for 5G the right solution for this new technology? Or do we need to sort of radically change the way that we want the new technology to be developed?
Um, it's a good topic. I think, of course, in hindsight, it's always easy to criticize. I think 5G probably is a bit of a strange animal, right? It was launched in 2019 by many more political reasons. The standard was not really launched as a full standard. It was actually divided in two, you could say, chapters. The first one being 5G non-standalone, and then 5G standalone, which required, of course, changes in your architecture. Uh, and the problem, I think, was the expectations, right? I mean, it's always about expectations. When vendors and the industry start pushing 5G around 2016 until 2019, there was a lot of conversation about 5G being the savior of monetization. So at that time, and still is the case, telco were struggling. They were growing at 1%, 2%. below their inflation rates, and 5G was positioned as, hey, this is going to be your monetization tool. And when we start launching 5G, we realized that 5G NSA was really LTE with steroids. It could actually increase the capacity per site massively. It could also drive more downlink speeds. In fact, if you look at India, right, the difference between LTE and 5G is 19 times faster
Hmm.
for the later. So definitely there was an improvement, right? But all these amazing cases that we talked in the past about autonomous drivers, cars, remote surgeries, and many others, XR, didn't happen, right? And then around 2022, we said, no, no, look, the problem was that what we launched was not the real 5G. Now the real 5G is going to happen with 5G SA. Get your core ready. And all operators did that. And by now, I think probably around 100 telcos have launched commercially
Hmm.
5G SA, some of them already nationwide. And revenues are not coming. So telcos are saying, look, between 19 until now, I have spent around 2 trillion US dollars in capex and spectrum, and revenues are flat. And of course, that created a super, super big clash on the expectations. Now, on the performance side, if I look the other part of the equation, the cost side, the performance, 5G is really bringing a lot of performance enhancements, right? Coming starting from the NR, which is um, the radio spectrum signaling and processing, which is like 10 to 15 times more efficient, to
Hmm.
energy savings in every single generation of radios, to ways to apply AI like sleeping cells when you are not using so much traffic, and many, many, many other things. Battery from the devices that can be actually reduced. So there is a lot of improvements. Now, that is not really solving the one and biggest elephant in the room for telcos, which is monetization. So then now the question for telcos is like, hey, Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei, I'm going to need to go into another big spending round from 2030 onwards. And I want to understand what is going to be the business case. And I don't think we have a real answer today. We have good
Hmm.
ideas of what can 6G can do, but I don't see in any of those good answers a good solution for the monetization problem we have today.
So is it fair to say, I mean, so technically the solution 5G delivered, right? You mentioned improvement, you mentioned, energy and cost savings, but sort of the more qualitative like aspect, or like, okay, I have something beautiful, but I need to sell it and I need to make money. That hasn't really been
Yeah.
successful. And I'm wondering, so from a telco perspective, right? I imagine I'm the, big CEO of a telco. I probably got burned. Like, I'm spending lots of money. I don't see enough returns. But do I have another choice? I mean,
Oh, that's a super interesting question. The problem is like this, and I think this is a little bit about our industry. It's full of vested interests. I mean,
mhm,
someone wants to sell you a spectrum, and I think they will continue trying to sell you spectrum. Someone wants to sell you more radios for that spectrum and more fiber to support those radio sites that use more spectrum and bigger radios and so forth, right? So the telco, in a way, sits in the middle. Telcos doesn't have any R&D capabilities. In the telco world, they have outsourced this to the Huawei, the Ericsson, the Samsungs, the Nokia of the world. A telco, even a large telco, like a tier one telco, might have 1 or 2% of their sales into R&D, while a techno company will have 20%.
yeah.
Ericsson has 15. Huawei, I think, is above 20%. So, in a way, telcos are prisoners of what the vendors decides to do. Of course, they have a big say, but in a way, they are influenced. So, I think that's the biggest problem, Pablo. That I don't think telcos have a way out, because what's going to happen, and I think I was relating in one of my articles. So by 2030, you will have three times more traffic coming in your networks. Uh, we have seen a decrease, but still is in nominal size is huge. I mean, you are in 180 exabytes per month. In
Hmm.
2030, you need to manage 500 exabytes. That's a very conservative scenario. Now, there is no other way than adding new layers of spectrum bands, which probably is
Hmm.
going to be 6 gigahertz. And if you have 6 gigahertz already, you will need to buy new radios. And that, if you multiply for 10,000 sites or even a large telco with 100,000 sites, that's a lot of money. So, in a way, telcos will need to go into that 6G cycle. uh, what I think it might change will be the mindset, because maybe telcos
Hmm.
this time will know, look, I'm not going to do this for monetization. That revenue side will not be impacted massively, but I need to do this in order to have better energy savings, more capacity per sites, all other things that will control my costs. That's the reality. So I think 6G will happen anyway.
Hmm.
Now the question for me is how we can apply some of the learnings from 5G into that process that is actually starting as we speak.
So for me, and one of the notes that I prepared for this is sort of a tech versus culture debate in a sense, because it seems from what you're saying that effectively the telcos are forced to have a larger pipe, and I know no one likes the comparison of the pipes, but does bring the point home in a way, and that's gonna be sort of a more efficient pipe rather than trying to make using 6G for a more direct monetization. Is sort of just bringing the cost down, but is that good enough? I mean.
No, no, it's not good enough. But I think this is my point. Huh? I don't think it's good. I mean, you need to do it. Of course, you need to try to
Mhm.
make sure that your factory, your bit factory, works with the latest technology. That makes sense, and that might imply new radios, new spectrum, new capabilities, new features, new architecture. I think that's something that needs to happen anyway. And there's one big thing that actually will drive the 6G development, which is that the traffic composition is going to be shifting radically from humans to actually intelligence, artificial intelligence, inferencing, intelligence moving from one side to another. So that actually requires different architectures and thinking. Now, uh, the problem is that we are trying to look for the solution in the wrong place. Technology or the G's will not fix our monetization problem. And I think this is the part that the industry it's super stubborn to learn. I think there is a cultural aspect, and I think it's great that you mentioned, um, because I mean culture beats technology every time. So the problem we have in this industry is culture. And I give you an example. We're still attached, very attached to 20 years old way of looking at monetization. At that time, a technical feature like an SMS was the product itself, right? I mean, you don't need to think too much. You just say,
Yeah.
look, if you want to communicate, send an SMS. You pay me some few cents, done. Billions of US dollars in SMS. Voice was the same. Hey, the technical feature of connecting you with someone else, you pay me per minute. That's 80% of the revenues 20 years ago was purely voice. And then data, right? Okay, I have a pipe. You want to do whatever you want, cats, videos, YouTube, Netflix. I don't care. I sell you this pipe. You pay me per GV. Done. So in a way, the technical feature was the product itself, and there was no much thinking. But the world has changed. The world now doesn't monetize straight uh, out of the box features, right? You need to have at least two components, and I will give you one example. One is you need to have some sort of a platform or orchestration or a way to expose those things for more complex cases. The second thing is you need to have an army of developers or enterprise who can consume those capabilities. And I always give this example of NVIDIA. People wrongly think that NVIDIA makes their money from GPUs, and that's not the case. GPUs are just the physical layer, right? But the real monetization for NVIDIA comes from CUDA. CUDA is their operating system.
Hmm.
90% of all the libraries that you use for GPUs are CUDA. And then on top of that, you have around 3, 4 million developers using CUDA. So even if you take out from Jensen Huang the GPUs, you cannot take the whole platform and ecosystem you have developed on top. And that's the
Hmm.
part we don't have as telco. We don't have an army of developers that are ready to go and get into our operating system, build things. And we don't have a joint operating system or platform that we can expose easily all these capabilities. So a new G will fix performance, will fix costs, but will not fix revenue because that's not what it's supposed to do in a way.
It's a little bit sad that it's not supposed to fix revenues, which is like the big challenge for telcos.
Yeah,
But when you're talking about sort of that idea of platform that you can expose, it sounds to me a little bit like the whole network API conversation and the idea of that programmable network. So, are you a supporter that do you see legs into it? And I'm asking because I mean, some people spend a lot of money acquiring companies for
yeah,
the
during
network APIs, and it didn't really turn out so far, at least as they wanted, without naming names, but
no, yeah, yeah.
billions were spent there.
No, look, I think it's the right thinking,
Hmm.
but we need to develop furthermore into that thinking. So I think if I take, for instance, Ericsson, I think Ericsson did an interesting move there. They bought this company, API CPaaS provider. Of course, they were unlucky because they bought it at the hype of CPaaS, so they overpaid, and then they need to write off assets, and then they say, "Look, what are we gonna do with this?" And then I think Ericsson was smart enough to say, "Look, the business for Ericsson is not to sell APIs, but we need to create a flying wheel." What does it mean? That if we help operators to monetize the hundreds of features that we produce in Access and Core, we will get the money back. So they created this Aduna company
Hmm.
where they are not going to make any money. It's more like they're inviting. I don't know. They have 20 shareholders because everyone gets a piece. So you have all the way from America Mobile, Deutsche Telekom.
Yeah, I have quite a few telcos there.
Exactly. And the idea is really not to make money out of APIs, but to say we need to build this platform where we can expose capabilities. I think the strategy is on the right direction. Um, they are, I think, two challenge ahead, and I think, of course, they're starting with very basic APIs. I mean, verification. Google can do
Yeah.
verification. You don't need you don't need telcos to do that. To be honest, I mean, of course, it can enhance, but uh, I expect, and if you see the camera API roadmap, it's becoming a little bit more advanced with MCP and a few other things. Of course, I think it's an early stage. But it's the right thinking that hey, something is missing here. We have the network. The network has ton of capabilities, but we don't have any way to expose it securely to developers. So that's the right place. Now there are two things that I think they're missing, or three things. One is developers. You can have an amazing platform, but the problem is developers, and developers are, I would say, a very different human species. I mean, I used to deal with developers in Google. In Google, they're amazing managing these communities, but they're very special people, right? They're not your typical telco attendee of Mobile World Congress. They are very special, and you need millions of those. I don't think anyone doing that job today. I've been advocating that maybe GSMA should take again that role because if you don't build that community, you can have the best exposing
Hmm.
platform. Nobody will use it, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that telcos have seen themselves always competing against each other, and I think now they need to think a little bit different. There are certain areas where they need to compete, and there's certain areas where they need to cooperate. And I was part of the initial setup of this API, camera API, and I think my conversations with telco in many cases was, oh no, but I don't want to cooperate with I don't know, Telefonica or these guys. I want to do it myself. And then you explain, yeah, but the developer doesn't want to come to
Yeah.
Mexico and only work with you and then talk. He wants a global platform. Ah, no, no, but that's not the way I work. That mindset is still there, like a silo mindset. And then the third thing is that I think the camera API guys need to get this a little bit more exciting. Okay, fine. We were looking in the low hanging fruit of uh, identity, but
Hmm.
okay, what else we can do with these networks, right? I mean, can we think a little bit bigger? Like, I give an example. Uh, there's gonna be around 16,000 humanoid robots by 2027.
Hmm.
Now, those robots will need to have some sort of identity and actually certification and proof of humanoid. That for me will be something that telco wants to do, right? You don't want any of these humanoid robots become drug and I don't know, kill someone. That is something you might want to do it. You leveraging on technologies that we have, like eSIM, which is amazing technology. So I think those are the three things that need to happen for making this like okay, like the CUDA of telco.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you're saying that telcos don't get along well, I think that's still the case 100%. I mean, most of the conversation that I have with telcos, whether they say directly or not, but there is always that sort of underlying mistrust of their fellow telcos. It's like, it's never going to be a sort of one plus one. It's always going to be I am one versus the others, and I don't trust those guys. It's a little bit again a mind shift that I think needs to happen.
Yeah, but, and look, I think they're competing with the wrong people. I don't think their competition or their market is competing against another telco. I mean, I think they need to think better where the value chain is moving, right? And how they can
Hmm.
participate in that value chain. One example I love, and I really in love with what they're doing, is Deutsche Telekom. I think they are getting the right idea that hey, telcos are needs to move away from just selling SIM cards. We need to make investments. We need to make partnerships. We need to make targeted investment in new infrastructure. They're trying to find a way that we need to participate in every single. I think they participate in every single initiative, all the way from AI, RAN, ORAN, you name it. I think that's the way you need to think on a new type of telco.
So trying different things and see what works.
Yeah,
Uh,
and maybe rethinking your role, right? I mean, think about this. I think the 20 years ago, our identity as a telco was very obvious. We needed to connect people.
mhm.
Like Nokia probably is one of the best campaigns. I would say not only in telco but in the world, ad campaigns connecting people. I mean, so straightforward, right? That's what you were doing. Now, after 20 years, we have 9 billion subscribers connected. There's still some way to go, but pretty much everyone in the world can connect to each other or to the world. So we have lost a little bit about what is our next identity. And I think that identity comes from the fact that we are moving into a world or an AI economy. And that AI economy will require not moving bits, uh, but actually moving intelligence. And that intelligence cannot only come from global data centers. It will need to also be distributed locally. And I think
Mhm.
connecting intelligence, moving intelligence is where telcos should start aiming.
So let me throw this out there for you. AI is
Mhm.
not a bubble then.
No, no, I don't think so. I think it's very concrete. There's always hype. I mean, there are two things, right? There's always hype. So you need to
Mhm.
try to kill some of the hype. But there are very concrete things about AI. First of all, and this is one of our problems in the industry. We need to understand that AI has been with us for 60 years. Actually, telecommunications, if you look back, Bell Labs and then AT&T was actually the
Mhm.
first users of AI, machine learning, and actually even Bell Labs was probably the first company who commercially used neural networks in the 60s for signaling processing. Was, of course, one unilayer neural network, so it's nothing compared to today. But we have been using it for 60 years, so
Yeah.
we know this thing. Now, what happened now is, of course, 2017, Transformer comes and say, hey, attention is all you need. And then all of a sudden, you have LLMs, right? Now, then on top of LLMs, you have this Gen AI trend. And I think that's where we need to be a bit careful. Gen AI is just a small piece of massive practice, which is
Mhm.
artificial intelligence. And I think the overall artificial intelligence will bring value to telcos. Uh, Probably the Gen AI part is a little bit overhyped. Uh, but one thing I have noticed this time is that telco CEOs have been extremely fast to adapt. I mean, usually, if AI would have, I mean, if this AI frenzy would have come 20 years ago, I think CEOs would have been very reluctant. But I'm really impressed, and I'm really glad, to be honest, that every single CEO recognized that this AI trend or wave is different to what we have seen in the past. So you can look at, well, Deutsche Telekom is a good example,
Mhm.
SKT, EY, it is a lot. I think
Yeah.
what Hatem is doing there is like out of this world. Um, Vodafone doing partnerships that are very interesting. Telstra with the partner with Accenture and Microsoft. So everyone is like, hey, no, this is different. Let's really put effort, money, CEO agenda topic. So now this year is going to be the CFO year, because of course now the CFO will say, "Show me the money, right? Okay, you have invested in all these amazing pilots, AI agents. Okay,
Yeah, the show
how
me
much
the money part is always a bit tricky, isn't it? At this stage, at least for AI.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a lot of experimentation. There is a lot of fluff as well. I mean, for instance, in my case, I'm a bit more conservative on the AI agent perspective
Mhm.
because I believe that AI agents are not ready yet. They are based on large language models, which are very prone to hallucinations. So, if you put an AI agent that is based on an LLM, you will just create a much bigger level of hallucination. And if you look at labs and tests, you're talking about 20 to 30% hallucination. And
Oh, wow,
that
that's a
level
lot.
in an enterprise, I mean, it's like for every 10 customers, 3 customers, you say something stupid.
Yeah.
So, so I think it's not ready. Nevertheless, I think the hype is real. I think there's something bigger, and I think it's good to see telcos. I mean, betting.
And that's a positive note. And then, if you circle back to what we're discussing, 6G and stuff, you already mentioned that sort of AI will change a little bit, sort of, the type of traffic, the use case that are going to be needed to be supported. But is can you have 6G without? So does AI needs to be embedded into 6G?
Yes, yes. I
How do
think
you see it?
actually, one thing that nobody likes to talk about is that in the 3GP releases, in 5G, we miss a little bit that window. Of course, now we catch up a little bit on release 17 and so forth, but 5G was, I mean, AI as basic machine learning models was there, but was not the main driver. Now, the industry quickly recognized, look, I mean, we need to make AI being a native part of radio access, of core networks, of everything we do. And now, if you look at release 18, 19, and now the upcoming 20, which is going to be in 2027, which finished the 5G era, you could say, and give us
Mhm.
there is a massive amount of AI and machine learning natively attached to the infrastructure. And I think it's critical in this sense, right? And maybe a bit of a different perspective. So networks are becoming super complex, and compared to other type of infrastructure, they are distributed. So which makes your life even more painful, right? So if you're a telco here in Mexico, you probably have 30,000 macro sites
Hmm.
in all kind of places. Uh, you have maybe two vendors or three vendors that manage all this infrastructure, but you need to use 70% of your sales to manage that. So it's massive, it's crazy. And why? Because a lot of the things are manually driven. A lot of the incident management is still manually driven. Optimization has a lot of manual components, even design and planning as well. Even when you implement the network, it's also a bit manual. Even when you want to do an upgrade, although there have been a lot of improvements, you need to do some few manual activities. So for me, the biggest focus of AI, in my view, will be, guys, we cannot be spending 70% on OpEx. We need to actually reduce this. We need to make these networks much more automated. Cannot be so manual work, and that's where embedding AI natively uh, could really help us a lot.
But will that, so let's say you have like the 2G network, the 3G network, 4G network, 5G network, then you put 6G on top with AI native. Will that be able to sort of also optimize your existing
Oh, okay, good point.
Gs?
I think if we move to year 2030, right, what will happen will be the following. So 5G, the 5G network, right, will be already upgraded all the way to release 19, or actually to release 20. So now you will have feature compatibility, and then you will also
Mhm.
have probably backward compatibility. So your 5G network should work well with 6G, and I think here's where vendors, since 4G has been quite consistent, right? I mean that whatever software you are putting is backward compatibility. Now, by then, I would expect that 2G and 3G networks are shut down. Um, we have seen a big trend in Europe and the US where they're shutting down 3G and 2G networks. So for me, one of the key requirements for 6G, if I were sitting in a city office, will be, look, by 2030, I need to shut down 2G and 3G, right? If not, I will probably maintain 2G. There's some reasons why you want to maintain 2G. Sometimes it's because of some voice coverage and maybe some IoT devices that are too expensive to change. But that one doesn't really use so much bandwidth. I mean, usually you can put it in one of the guard bands. It's very easy to manage. 3G needs to go because also you want to use that spectrum. And then what should happen is that as 5G becomes, you need to, in a way, upgrade those sites. You will probably have multi technology radios, so you will just change those 5G radios for 5G
Mhm.
6G capable radios, and then all the spectrum will move to 6G. So that should be the logic evolution. But and I think this is another important point for telcos. Uh, we also like to live with a lot of technical depth, meaning uh, I work in the BSS space now. You have systems that have been there for 15 years, right? And I understand, right? It's a right of asset. It's working. Why touch it?
Yeah.
But that's also the reason why you cannot do things easily, right? And many times telco have this big thinking saying, look, if it works, keep it there. Just place some logic on top and you connect it. But my view is that by 2030, telcos should have a clean slate, kill all their old systems, so we have at least a 5G, 6G layer only to manage and to take care of.
Okay, that, I mean, seems quite aggressive, I would say. Sorry, in 2026, but it's good to expect something positive from the telco side. But I'm curious. I heard some people discussing whether or not do we still need to have the evolution of cellular technology that is divided in Gs. Sort of, do we really need to have that
Good.
categorization and that separation of tech, or can we do something different? Is there not an alternative as well, or is just people talking because
No, I
I
mean
don't know?
it's a valid point. It's a valid point because you could also claim, okay, Sebastian, we have 5G until release 20. That's the last release of
Mhm.
5G. Can we keep doing releases, right? I mean, if we need a new feature, there's a
Yeah.
release 21, release 22. Why do we need really this massive 6G thing? Now, that release, in my view, depends only of one thing. Do you really need to make a major architectural change,
Mhm.
right? If not, you can go with upgrades like releases all the way until whenever you want. The only reason you need really to make a new G is when you need to jump to a new architecture. So, for instance, if I take the example from 3G to 4G, we big architectural change you could say is we move from circuit switch voice to all IP, right? That was like a big shift. And of course, going all IP requires a completely different thinking. From 4G to 5G, I would say that the biggest change was that we moved to a service-based architecture, and that was 5G core, right? So copy paste all the ideas that these hyperscalers have been bringing to cloud, and we say, well, guys, we cannot be designing monolithic networks. We need to design service-based architecture, microservices, and so forth, right? And that's what we did with 5G core in a way. And of course, on top of that, a lot of enhancements. Now, the question for me will be: you only need 6G if you need to make a big architectural shift.
Mhm.
If not, yeah, I mean, you can have upgrades. In my perspective, and I think this is debatable, I think we need uh, a new architecture. Systems are too heavy, too complex. They require too manual work. They need to have much more automation embedded. We need to eliminate, in my view, many of the functions. I think we have redundant functions
Mhm.
and even functions that nobody use. So I think we need to make a simplification of the network, and that will require a change in the architecture. The other part that is important as well is that, and also this is debatable. The radio, you could say well, layer one, layer two of the radio also will have significant changes in the design, especially as we are bringing AI in RAN, and that also will require an architectural change. So, in a way, I think we need that. We need that change in 6G.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
if someone says, "Look, I don't think we need any big architectural change," yeah, you could go with release 21, 22, 23 until we need something big.
So it seems this time around 6G is needed, but potentially we shouldn't be talking 7Gs. Is 6G is done good, well enough? You would have that sort of programmable AI enabled, let's call it platform, for the sake of a better word, that would then enable just more and more releases without like a big shift on 7G, unless something bigger than AI comes along. But that's a few years from now.
Yes, I think let me think. I mean, this is what you say is interesting. I think I don't want to be I don't want to be wrong, but actually, Boria Ekholm, I think towards the last end of last year, actually said that 6G will be the last G. So I think you're right.
Probably need to change the title of the podcast then,
Yeah, no,
reflecting
I think
that.
it's there. I'm actually I'm checking, so I don't lie, but I recall very clearly because for me it was like, wow,
And that's a bold
that's
statement.
that's a Super Bowl statement coming from a company that leaps out of G's.
Yeah.
If you think about it, and this is the challenge also, I see Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei not as a vendor. I think, and this is also another problem that telco CEOs fail to see. uh, is our R&D department. I mean, that's what Boria, Hotard, and Huawei CEOs are. I mean, they are the R&D department of telecom.
Mhm.
So when procurement squeeze them, they are not squeezing the price; they're squeezing the R&D money that they're going to be spending in telecom. So for someone like Ericsson to say, look, 6G is going to be the last G, it's interesting because what happened after that? What happened with these networks? How they're thinking? My perspective probably, and this is only my speculation, is that uh, the way that I mean, and here's the part I also want to give thanks to all the researchers and developers of these standards. So imagine you, me and Pablo, you, me are standing in 2010,
Mhm.
and our boss come and say, "Hey, Pablo, Sebastian, you need to think how networks will be in 2030." And based on that, get together with everyone and try to agree. And that is a standard. I mean, these guys are thinking 15 years in advance. So, I mean, what they do is like amazing work. I mean,
Mhm.
even in hindsight, it's easy to criticize. It's like science fiction, right? I mean, how in the world you will know where it's going to be?
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild. Now, that's okay, but for a world that is changing so fast, I think this kind of long year planning, multi-year planning, with a huge amount of capital spending and R&D spending probably is not making too much sense, right? And I expect that from 6G onwards, we will think more of. I don't. I'm trying to think. It's more like a sprints. Like
Mhm.
I mean, we need to change architecture. Okay, we don't need to wait 10 years for 7G, right? I mean, let's look into a new architecture roadmap, and that takes maybe 2 to 3 years, right? But I think these ways of working of 10 years, it's too heavy for everyone, and it's just too crazy to plan, right? That's my view. So we will have something. Maybe they will not call it 7G, but it will be more like maybe jumps or small jumps than like a massive jump.
And that's a very interesting point, and probably like a great point to end the podcast. I know we could be talking for ages about this, but need to wrap this up. And yeah, the idea of like sort of changing from that sort of very long 10-year type of roadmap in something, as you mentioned, sprints, something that is a little bit faster, maybe can address problems in a little bit more of a efficient or effective way, does make sense for whatever 7G is not gonna be. But Sebastian, thank you very much for joining me on the dreams. Really appreciate your insights.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much for this invitation and this great conversation.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.